Hello and welcome to episode 146, Property Mastermind podcast with Bob Anderson and Hilary Saxton. Today we are talking the impact council has on your property development. We will give you some positives and some negatives, and you might learn a few things that you could do to make sure you're more likely to have a positive result with your council. Anyway, let's jump on into episode 146. Hey, and welcome to episode 146. Hey, Bob.
Hey, how you going, Hilary?
Yeah, good, thanks, Bob.
Me too, if you're wondering.
You might look and see we're wearing the same clothes. Maybe we've done a couple of podcasts back to back.
Could be. Mm-hmm.
Either that or these are the only clothes that we have.
Could be.
No, definitely not the case. Hey, Bob, thanks for joining yet again and coming up with such a fabulous topic.
It's usually you that comes up with the topics. Is that having a little shot at me there?
No, you actually did one. You actually came up with one yourself. I was like, where is it?
You come up with probably 80% of them, I'd say.
Mostly from conversations I have with people. So
yeah.
And I figure if it's a knowledge gap or if it's a problem for one person, it's probably a problem for somebody else. So, Bob, today, before we kick off into the good, the bad and the ugly when it comes to councils, and crikey, we've seen some good and we've seen some bad, and by hokey have we seen some ugly. Anyway, what's your tip this week?
My tip for this week is when you're using your earpods and you've finished, put them straight back in the case.
Now, why is that, Bob?
Because if you don't, you could lose them.
Really?
I bought a new set of noise cancelling, Apple earpods, not the cheapest version, the dearest version. Lasted 2 weeks, which is probably average. No, not really. But I do tend to lose things from time to time. And obviously I've used them. They're not back in the case. And they've gone to the same place that socks go to, perhaps. When you
the sock matrix.
End up with about 6 socks.
Single socks.
Yeah. Could be the same place, not sure, but definitely put those earpods away.
Yeah. I looked everywhere, and we did the whole, page them from your device, etc.
Yep.
We did that, and it said they were at the house, but we've looked high and low and cannot find them. So
no.
Yeah, if there's any hoodoo guru people out there who are able to go, it's there, let us know.
I know how to find them. Buy another pair.
Yeah.
Probably find them, the old pair, within 24 hours. It usually works that way, so I'm holding off.
Okay, so for the full disclosure here, he had 2 pair of Sennheisers, 2, not just one set, 2 sets. And when we moved, he lost both sets. And then he bought the new ones only like a month ago. 2 weeks later, he loses them. But I found them, one set of Sennheisers, as you bought, a week after you bought them, the other ones. And then the second set, after a few days after you'd lost them. So
I might be known now as the absent-minded developer.
I don't know what, you just lose stuff all the time. I think you just put things down and walk off. I think it's man mode.
I think I've got too much going on in my head.
Yeah. You do juggle some big stuff. If anyone, probably I'm the only one that really understands your world. Bob does some incredibly amazing stuff that would blow your mind if you really knew.
Losing earpods.
Not bigger than that. Anyway, Bob, let's talk about councils because love them or hate them, we need them. We have to.
Well, unfortunately, we do need them. They're there.
They're there.
Yeah. Although, on the odd occasion we can circumvent them, but councils.
Isn't it circumnavigate?
Oh, let's go around. I have circumnavigated a few councils, but if I can circumvent them, I'll not even have to deal with them, which is what I'd love to do, but you can't.
No, okay.
In most instances. But councils, they call them a necessary evil, call them whatever you like.
I've heard you call them some pretty serious names, Bob.
I have.
They are unmentionable words on this podcast.
On any podcast.
Oh, anywhere, actually. They're pretty much those ones you go in the bathroom, shut the door and use by yourself words.
But look, if we're going to be a property developer, we've got to deal with them.
Yeah.
And they're not all the same. So
no. So, Bob, let's begin with an experience. I've just written down, I've just written down a few of our mentoring students and a few people that we know that have had experience. And I thought it's really nice to walk through some of these examples so you can know what could happen and what's possible and how you can fix those issues. So let's begin with the ugly one, the biggest and ugliest that caused the most swear words in your life.
Oh, well, that'd be the retirement village that we're developing at the moment.
Yeah.
But I'm going back to the beginning when we had to get our development permit.
So that took a year of constant conversations, interaction, communication over what was required. Yep, you're going to
Yep.
need that. Tick the box. You did everything that you needed
A
to.
very friendly 12 months with the council, making sure that
How many points of contact do you think you actually had with them over that time?
20 going on, some of them meetings that went for a few hours. So just to make sure, because it was new for them, they hadn't had this particular type of development in their council previously. So it was a bit new to them. And it did take a bit of education in regard to us educating the council. But
Bob, you often have to educate your people all the time, even last week.
I've even done PowerPoint presentations for council planning officers on some of the stuff in the early days of some of the projects that we did, because a lot of councils weren't up to date with them. But in this case, there was that, and just ticking all their boxes, a lot of things around, not just the town planning aspects, but the services, the sewer, the water, how we're going to deal with a whole range of issues. And got to a point where we're both happy with each other, so we lodged. Rather than lodge and not really know council's attitude, because it's a $60 million project.
And it's 99 properties on the side of a Greg Norman golf course. So there was a lot that needed to be worked through. So it took a year of working through, but they were positive.
Oh, they were positive. And when we were positive, we knew we ticked all the boxes. We lodged the application. And it seemed to be proceeding okay, as far as we could tell. And it was due to be approved, as far as we could tell.
So on the Thursday afternoon, when there's a Friday of work, then you've got the weekend.
Yep.
Monday was a public holiday.
Yep.
It may even have been
Labor Day in New South Wales.
Yeah. And then Tuesday was their meeting. On the Thursday night, when there was only going to be one work day left, what happened?
Well, we got notified by the council that they weren't going to support the application. In other words, they're going to hit it on the head.
After a year of acting like it was going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So we attended. I got a business partner in that. We attended the council meeting.
You got to say
we
what?
Tried to
30 words.
Oh, we said a few things. Our planner said a few things, but we knew it was going to get knocked back. But I wanted to be there to face them and look them in the eye, and so we did that. Got knocked back, and then a few dirty tactics were tried to be pulled. They suddenly decided to change the zoning of our site that we had under. At that time, had we settled the site? No, we hadn't settled it, but we had it under option. And we're pretty much locked in. It was a put and call option, so we're locked in to settle. But we really had to settle on it, basically, without getting too complex on it. And so they hit it on the head. But what they tried to do is suddenly change the zoning of the land, like rezone it.
And that was within weeks, wasn't it?
Immediately. That was within days. That was within 2 days of knocking it back.
Now that's dirty council play.
Because they knew what the zoning was, and they knew what you can do on it, and what we were proposing we could do. And so we were just trying to, previous to that, just be friendly with council, tick all the boxes,
get it done.
And so we had to go straight to the Department of Planning and get an injunction on the council first of all.
How did you hear that they were doing that, Bob? I don't remember that.
A little bit of insiders. The thing is, the general population there were in favour of it. Just about everybody we spoke to in the public wanted it to happen, and as far as we knew, council wanted it to happen, and we couldn't quite work out why the backflip. Although we've sort of guessed a little bit since then of what it might have been. And
can we allude to that at some point?
Oh, yeah, there's corruptions at all level in all sorts of governments and councils. I'm not saying that one was, but just a general comment I made. But
general comment, someone's auntie's cousin's brother wanted it for something, sort of thing. That sort of corruption, maybe.
Well, anyway, that's another subject. So we had to get an injunction on, first of all, on the council, but also on the state government Department of Planning, so that they didn't, and we don't know that they would have gone along with council and rezoned it, but we had to pull that up straight away. So dirty tactics right from the beginning within 2 days, and other things that happened along the way. So it turned into a very protracted court case, because we went to the Land Environment Court because we believe we were within our rights and we should get it approved. Council came up with 31 reasons. Out of everywhere. They plucked them from everywhere as to why they didn't want to
Remember,
approve
this
it.
is after 1 year meetings that went for 2 hours, over 20 meetings, interactions of them being in favour of it, then changing their mind 3 days before.
Yeah, and normally there's this period where you can actually sit down and prior to the full court case, sit down and discuss it. They didn't want to discuss it at all. And so it was off to court, a land environment court. And my budget, having spoken to some lawyers, town planners, my budget was between 150 and 200,000. That's what they told me it would take. And it went over $1 million and went over a year. And so in order to guarantee as best I could my win, I hired the top barrister in Australia for that particular type of product that I was doing, which is manufactured home estate. Also got a backup barrister to work with the top barrister. He was a pretty crack barrister himself, and one of Sydney's top property lawyers. So I had a top-end property lawyer, a really good barrister, and a super barrister. They don't come cheap.
No. But fighting, and the council at this point are using ratepayer money.
That's all they ever use. They don't. They're bankrupt. All councils are bankrupt, other than relying on the generosity of ratepayers.
So they just use that money, and there was
Call
no
that generosity.
yeah, exactly. And there was no
no.
And imagine if the people of that town really knew that had gone on.
Yeah, well, what you got to realise is when you go to the Land Environment Court, it's not a civil action. So when you win, you can't claim damages.
No.
You each cover your own costs. And so we had to cover our costs ourselves, and council had the ratepayers cover theirs. And there was some scathing articles in the newspaper after we eventually won from a lot of ratepayers saying, this is ridiculous. You should never have knocked it back, because all 31 points that they said they used to knock it back were one by one refuted. But it cost a lot of money to refute all those things. And I didn't just hire local consultants, say something like environmental consultant. We hired basically international consultants, which cost a lot of money, because I just had to go for the very best.
Because if you'd lost one of those points, Bob, would that be out?
No, it wouldn't be necessarily one, but everyone you lose impacts somewhere,
Yeah.
And some are more important than others. And so which
was the most important of those 31?
Oh, look, all of them, because it was on a golf course. They were talking about people dying from getting hit in the head with golf balls and all sorts of things. So we hired one of Australia's an international golf course designer who's designed over 150 courses worldwide. That was our consultant. When council found out that was our consultant, they didn't even bother trying to get one. But still, that cost us money. Environmental reports, acoustic reports, lighting reports. It went on. Some of the reports I had to get cost $70,000. So anyway, council's barrister threw in the towel after about 3 months, realising he's just getting headbutted every day. So they had to go and replace him. And anyway, that's.
Do you think he hit? Do you think he threw the towel in because he just realised how ridiculous it was?
Well, he was getting smashed by our barrister. I think it was embarrassing. Because
was he from that local town?
No, he wasn't local. He was a Sydney barrister, but he wasn't the expert in this type of development.
Right.
I got an absolute expert, and it was proved on day one that he really wasn't up to pace.
Yeah.
And a lot of things power that council thought they would have over our development, they don't legally have, because it's not just a standard type of development. So it went on, and the council officer was there each day that we were in court. We weren't in court for the full 12 months. You sort of have a spell, then you have to go off and do certain things, and you come back and have another spell.
More reports, more people in.
Cost you $30,000 a day, when you're in there dusting it up. And I think really they were hoping I was going to run out of money.
Yeah, they just don't know how much grit you've got, Bob. Once you've dug, you're a scorpion.
Well, I did walk over to the council officer about when we were up to about $700,000 or $800,000 expenditure, and I said, if you think I'm going to run out of money, you're not. And I made the comment, which was actually a whole heap of BS. I said, you guys are going to run out of money before I do. I said, and which obviously isn't the case, because they got all the ratepayers' money.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to put it up them to know that, if you think you can just keep extending everything in the hope I'll run out of money, it won't happen.
Bob, have you ever heard of anyone else having such a horrific experience and having such a corrupt experience with council like that?
Oh, corrupt, yes, because I've been in the business for 40 years, but most councils aren't corrupt at all, and it's only occasionally.
Just that one, yeah.
Well, occasionally you get individuals. There's a lot more in the old days. There's lots of brown paper bags thrown around in the old days, of course.
Did you get involved in it?
No, but I did see a few passing in the night.
Yeah.
Yeah, but none of them were mine. But
didn't intercept any?
No, you don't accept brown paper bags.
So,
But
but at the end, let's go. Just take it to the end.
well, at the
One,
end, finally, we crushed all 31 of their thing. Then, eventually we got the win that we needed.
and then they lost their jobs.
Well, the head town planner lost. Well, when I say they suddenly
Weren't there.
resigned, and the 2IC town planner, who was the one in court, suddenly resigned within 2 weeks of the verdict coming out. It was funny how they both resigned at the same time, but and not long after that, the mayor went his own way, and anyway, life goes on. But that was a tough one. Lots of nights pacing the floor at 2 a.m. Wondering, well, because you know what it's like in court. In any case, you're never absolutely sure you're going to win. I mean, you might think you've got grounds and you're confident you're going to win, but you never know. And the downside isn't all that great. So, but we prevailed. Justice prevailed. We were quite confident that we had the right. Right was on our side, and it proved to be the case when all 31 motions were quashed. Now that's pretty rare. You don't. Like, I'm making out like all councils are bad.
No, but I'm just because we've got some great examples coming up. But I want to give examples.
That's the ugliest one I've been involved in personally.
Very
I'm sure there's been much bigger court cases with big companies, Mirvac, Australian, Lend-Lease. I'm sure they've had some absolute cracker court cases, where they spent, who knows, millions and millions and millions. But that was mine, and I'm not a Mirvac, and it wasn't a great experience.
But Bob, after that as well, just to top it off, they then changed something else, didn't they?
Well, they did eventually change the zoning. The only council in New South Wales that changed this particular R2 zoning to something else, whereby you couldn't do the manufactured home estate retirement villages. Every other council you can, and they could too initially, and that's what we won the case on. So, but look. Councils, well, you got to deal with them.
Okay, so that's a bad example of a New South Wales.
You asked me the ugliest one.
Yeah, that's the ugliest.
That's the ugliest I've been involved in.
Tell me about the best one that either you or a mentoring student that you can recall, the best experience you've had with council.
I think the best experience you can have with a council is a quick approval.
Yeah.
And one with minimum conditions. So when we lodge a development application with council, there's often a bit of toing and froing. Even if it's fully compliant, they'll have questions. They're going to ask, and that's fine. You've got a town plan, you've got an architect to answer those. And eventually when you get your approval, there'll be standard conditions in there that just go with every approval. But then there'll be specific ones that relate to your application, to your project. And you have to read those conditions, you have to understand them. There's a point in time when you can negotiate them and so forth before it becomes locked in stone, before the permit's actually issued. So anything that happens quickly is good because that reduces your holding costs if you've already settled on your site.
Holding costs, for those that don't know, that we're talking interest rates. Generally.
So if you purchase your site, well, the longer council take to give you an approval, the more it's going to cost you in interest. That's pretty simple. The shorter it is, the better. And so a quick approval with minimum conditions has to be the best. And probably one of the better ones that I've had, is a duplex development where we lodged it and we got a development permit 12 business days later.
Why was it so quick? I can't believe that one. You're like, can't believe it, 12 days.
Well, only because it would normally take 6 weeks.
Yeah. But
which is pretty quick.
Yes.
Anyway, I mean, we know people that have spent a lot longer than that trying to get a development permit on a duplex, but that council is quick, and 6 weeks is sort of normal, but 12 days, I don't know. And no questions at all. We were sitting around waiting because they got 10 business days to come back and ask some questions. Like, that's just like the first step.
And it's 10 business days standard
and an
from
information
every council?
Well, the first 10, no, well, Queensland, which is where this one was, 10 business days to notify you that, they've accepted your application and it's correctly lodged, and then they've got another period of time by which they can come back and ask questions. So within the first 5 days of the 10, we got notified that it's correct application. I said, oh, that's good.
Great.
So we thought, well, it'd probably be another 21, 30 days and we'll get some questions. And on the 12th day, we got our permit. No questions.
We just like, boom. I remember you saying, my God, it's through. I was like, wow. But it was.
And that can happen. I mean, I'm thinking of another one of our students got a a 3-story apartment block with a basement, so a decent sized project, about 10 units. They got through that at a council south of Sydney in 11 weeks.
Mm.
And
Oh, that's promising.
I'm thinking in the day, I don't know if anybody's developing these days in that particular city. Townhouse developments used to take 5 weeks. They weren't even an advertised use as well. That was in Gladstone quite some years ago, probably 10 years ago now. But you could punch through a 4-pack in 5 weeks. So look, the timing that councils take to approve varies quite a lot. It varies from council to council. It varies from state to state.
Well, now we're on timing. Can we open the can of worms on Victoria?
Well,
Some Victorian
more. I've
councils.
had more to do with Melbourne than Victoria in general. Although I did do a retirement village in Bendigo.
What was that like
It
for
it
approvals?
wasn't too bad.
Okay.
I used a town planner from Bendigo who was well connected. They had a town planning and surveying business. They'd been around for quite a while. The senior town planner, the guy who was the director, basically owned that company. He had good relationships and connections in council, which is why we chose him. And it wasn't too bad. It was, I can't remember how long it took because it's probably 2007 or something like that. But it went through pretty well. And that's a regional one. We got students who do regional Victoria that seem to get there okay with councils.
Yeah.
But my experience has been more with Melbourne. And look, there's some, but you could say this about any capital city really. But there are some councils there that are a bit anti-development, and you're probably better off not developing there. Or if you do, and there's certainly money to be made there, is be prepared for a bit of a wait.
What's the benefit for them if they wait? And I love the
Who's them?
The council. If you're made to wait, what's the benefit?
No benefit. They're just slow, and
Right.
if they're a bit anti-development, they'll be as slow as they can be to almost talk developers out of developing there. I can think of a council which I never developed in because they were just over the top eco, and definitely not against the whole
not against
environmental situation. The whole lot, environmental, eco, all that's good, but they were like
make it
ballistic.
difficult.
Yeah. And I know a lot of developers who just refused to develop there. It did improve a lot over the years. And so there are councils that are more pro-development than others, but they can change. A while ago now, but there was a council that used to be reasonably good and quite a lot of, how would I put it, like environmentally, not
aware?
Environmentally aware is good, but I'm talking about people that are like have a real barrow to push.
All right.
Some of those got into council and got to control the vote in council. And they were basically anti-development, anti-people making money, anti-everything. And so that council got stifled and there was not a lot of development. They were pretty much anti-business. A lot of the businesses in that area suffered, and to a point where they were thrown out on their ear quite quickly at the next round. But I think we had to put up with them for 3 or 4 years while nothing much was happening. And basically that whole area went backwards from an economic point of view. But it did change again. And
back to what you might consider normal.
Normal. That's all you want is normal.
So there have been, you've had the ugly experience and a few normal experiences. What about we had a mentoring student who, after his mentoring time, he was talking to us. We always often keep in touch. And he was just saying that he was having a problem, and it turned out that the town planner and the architect didn't get along.
Was that the council town planner or his private town planner?
I think it might have been his private one. So it was affecting the way they were lodging. It was slowing things up.
There was a lot of, I think I remember bits of it, but he had a lot of problem actually getting to council with an application.
Yeah.
And there was some history which he wasn't aware of between the town planner he chose, the private town planner, and the architect he chose. And that's why, I mean, if possible, it's not an absolute, it doesn't have to be this way, but if an architect and your town planner have had some good, relationships over a period of time, that can be a really good thing as well. And we've done that ourselves. in some of the patches where we've done developments where
Oh, yeah.
there's been a long history of good relationship between those two, because they have to work together on the application quite a lot.
And it just makes things faster and easier.
Yeah.
And Bob, what about when people do go have a problem? I don't want to be on
With council.
Yeah, and maybe there've been people don't want stuff to happen, and so it ends up going to like VCAT or the Land and Environment Court. What generally, you gave me a great. I want you to tell you the story that we talked about earlier today, where you were saying often councils just squash stuff so it can go there, and they don't have to be responsible for it.
Yeah. Well,
Are you okay to talk about that on air?
Oh no. Well, yeah. Well, why not? It's real.
Yeah.
In some places, councils have been let get away with. This is my opinion, right? This is just my opinion. Have been allowed to get away with too much, and they could have and should have been pulled into line more by the state government, because generally there's an equivalent of Department of Planning in the state government level, which actually oversees local government, which is councils. And in some cases, of course, you've seen councils go into liquidation, and then the Department of Planning has had to basically step in and put up an interim sort of structure, like if an individual or a company went broke, they put a receiver manager in. Well, that's even happened. So what I'm saying is that the state government department, I'll call it the Department of Planning, controls a lot of that. And I think in some places they've let councils get away with had their own way for too long. And sometimes I've seen councils who will knock back an application because there's a few objectors. And we know there's objectors who just object for the sake of objecting. There's career objectors out there.
NIMBYs.
No, well, I've seen them, but not just not in my backyard people. People that object to an application on the other side of town because they're just vigilante, well, not vigilante, I don't know what you call them, psycho anti-development type people who just spend their time objecting to any development application. Their names pop up
forward
all over the place, all over the time.
Yeah.
Now, they should be disregarded. This is my opinion. It's a free society. So if you want to object to a development application, you should have the right to do so, and you do.
Yes.
But your argument really should be based on, like, say, town planning issues, not because
you don't like the
NIMBY
idea
thing.
of it.
Well, when I moved here,
the
whole street was just houses.
Yeah.
And now there's 4 townhouses going up where there used to be one house. That's not a town planning argument. And I can bet you when they go to sell their site, they're looking for a developer to pay over the odds to them. But, it needs to be based on town planning, on zoning. I mean, if it's zoned for it and the application is conforming, well, it should be approved. So anyway, probably getting a little bit diverted there, but
we were talking about the whole, when it goes to something like VCAT, why they end up there, and
why it ends up there. And some councils have this attitude. Well, there's a couple of objections, and I think they think about votes. They think, well, I'm upsetting some voters if we approve this, and so they don't approve it for whatever reason, and they think, well, I'm not going to approve it, and now it heads off to the Land and Environment Court or VCAT, like you said, and if it gets approved, which it will if it's got merit, they can say, well, don't blame me, not my fault. They say to the objectors, we hit it on the head, and that way they think they're making everybody happy. Not really making the developer happy, but I mean the developer ends up with an application because so much that goes to the Land and Environment Court or even particularly VCAT, I think, in Victoria, ends up getting turned around and gets approved. So many things do. And
Bob, mostly do people go through with it, or do they not because they don't want to waste the time because time costs money?
It costs time and money to go to court.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be fair. Nearly all the time, most of the time, 90%, 90-something% of the time, you get an approval.
Yeah.
There'll be some back and forth, a bit of negotiating on the way between your architect, your planner, and the council, and all that sort of thing. That's normal. But you end up with pretty much what you want, nearly always, and compliant.
Unless we do the Bob Anderson, push a few boundaries like we did, not at the retirement village, but other places.
Well, sometimes I push boundaries a little bit if I think I've got a reasonable chance of getting away with it. And some councils are okay. If you've got a good argument, they'll let you do certain things that aren't strictly in accordance with the planning scheme. They might be a bit relaxed about certain things. And, if I can give it a little push, I will. But I won't I won't put an application in if I think, oh, this particular aspect, they're just going to not want to do it. I don't, like, why would I bother doing that?
Yeah.
So yeah, applications compliant, well, as much as you can. But where were we with these councils? Because I was getting sidetracked.
Yeah, I think we were just, Mum a bit like that way too. I think we were just talking about, VCAT, do most of them get overturned and most people have a great result? The question was why they go there, which was the whole council thing.
Yeah.
And then generally it's a win for the people.
Yeah. And look, there's even jealousy occasionally. I was doing a development once. I think it was like 20 townhouses or something like that. And I had an issue with the stormwater and I had to get legal point of discharge off the site. And I did have a solution for it. But the council engineer was pushing back on it a lot, and I didn't know why. What occurred is I had a hydraulic consultant. That hydraulic consultant actually was on a fairly friendly relationship with the council one. And this wasn't the guy that was doing the application for me. It's just somebody I knew. And he said, oh, that particular guy at council, that engineer, hates developers. I said, why would he hate developers? Like we pay so much money to councils. Why would he hate us? He said, he's just jealous. He said he's never really, and he knew this guy personally. He said he's been there in the engineering department at council forever. He's never wanted to step out and work for an engineering company or set up his own business. He's just been there reluctantly, doesn't like his job, hates it, and thinks that developers just make a fortune. And he doesn't want to be the guy that helps the developers make a fortune. So whenever he can, he'll like jack up or stretch things out. That is a very rare case, of course, but it's one that I had an experience with.
What about, Bob, the actual process? What is the actual process there?
Oh, for a development application?
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the type of project, obviously, the scale, the size, what it is. But typically, let's say something simple, some townhouses, duplex, whatever, we have to lodge an application. And you want the application to tick all the boxes, ideally. So you engage a private town planner and you would engage an architect on the design side. So those two work very closely together, which is when we talked before about somebody who had two that didn't work closely together. And so the architect would handle all the design stuff and the town planner would make sure that it complies, that setbacks from boundaries are right, the right amount of open space,
Car
private
parking,
open space, public open space, turning circles, all these sorts of things to make sure that the design complies. And you'd start off with a survey first up, but and then the architect would design up, be talking to the town planner, make sure it fits, and then a landscaped architect would come in over top of that, do a concept design. This is typical. That's a pretty simple one. Some states you have to do a bit more at the development application stage, e.g. like in Victoria, but then the next step, which is your building permit, you do a bit less. So there's about probably 4 consultants involved in a very basic application for something like a duplex: architect, town planner, surveyor, landscaped architect. You might need a bit of commentary from an engineer at that point, but you might not. Might be the next stage.
And then the next thing, Bob, what about the councils that have a bit of a fast track now?
Well, some do have fast tracks. In Queensland, for instance, Brisbane City Council and a number of councils in Queensland, they've got a thing called Risk Smart. It's been out there for, it could be 15 years at least, not sure, whereby in certain applications, so they're not large applications that don't require special reports, acoustic or flood reports or anything like that. They're very straightforward developments. You can get them assessed by a private town planner. They're town planners who are not so much licensed with council, but where they're
certified with them.
Certified, I suppose, with council to be able to do the application process that council normally does. So that's a Risk Smart. So first of all, you have to ask council, is it okay to do this one by Risk Smart? Your planner would do that. And they say, yeah, that one's okay. And then the private town planner would do it. They go to the point of actually approving it with conditions. Then it goes back to council. Council look over it. They might add another couple of conditions. They might strike a couple of things out, but generally mostly in accordance with that because it's a straightforward, simple, not big project. And that process can be very quick. So if you replace a sort of bureaucracy like a council with private enterprise, it happens a lot quicker.
Mm.
So you can have things that might take 4, 5, 6 months in council going through in 4, 5, 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And
it's CDC is called
CDCs in New South Wales, they can be quite quick. That covers the development permit, but also the construction certificate in New South Wales. So that's driven more like by private certifiers who are credentialed, because there's different levels of certifiers that'll to do that, and that can go through very quickly as well.
We're just trying to be a bit more positive because we did start off a bit negative, so I'm pointing out some of the good bits.
Yeah, but remember, it's only a few percent of applications that you get problems with, really.
And
and CDCs, very, very quick. So very quick's good. We said that at the beginning of the podcast because it holds back your holding costs. And so if you combine that, think about this: if you were to get a property under contract and get an extended settlement, let's say 6 months or 4 months, even, whatever, a longer than average settlement. Average settlement these days probably 60 days anyway, because finance is always slower to get. So imagine a 4-month settlement where you could get the development permit approved, or even CDC, the development permit and the construction certificate approved before you settled.
How good would that be?
Because you can do that. You don't have to own the land to lodge a development permit. As long as you've got either the permission of the owner, which if you're going to do that, you'd have that as a condition of the contract, or sometimes some states only have to produce a contract to show that it's under contract.
That came up in our Q&A this week, actually, didn't it? Someone was asking questions about that.
So you could, and I've done this, I got an extended contract and had the approvals ready and waiting, and almost the builder, outside the property in his ute, or maybe the demolisher outside the property with an excavator the day after you settle. And that really shortens things up, which helps you financially.
It does. And then there are the odd occasion that you don't need to use a council at all. Splitters.
Splitters, yeah, you're right. I forgot about those. So a splitter typically is a 2-lot subdivision. It could even be a 3, but it's where you have 2 lots on one title. That's different from a 2-lot subdivision. A 2-lot subdivision, just quite quickly, you start off with 1 lot, then you subdivide it. Let's say, keep it simple, 2-lot subdivision. You start off with 1 lot, then you subdivide it into 2 lots. That requires a development permit. Lots of splitters around, particularly in Brisbane, but even some elsewhere. It's 2 lots on one title. So it's already 2 lots. Instead of having to split the land and create 2 new titles, it's already 2 lots. All you have to do is split the title. And that's a job for a property lawyer. And that you don't need council permission at all to do anything. They don't even have to approach council. It's got nothing to do with them. It's already 2 lots, and you're just separating the title, which can be done between your property lawyer and the state government department that handles titles. And I've seen them go through in 3 days.
Oh, that's pretty good. 3 days.
Yeah, that's the fastest I've seen them go through, but probably 3 or 4 weeks would probably be average.
So, Bob, I think in summary, we've pointed out the ugly one, but we've had they're
a minority.
Yeah, they are a minority, but it's just really, in summary, you just got to get your paperwork done properly.
Use the right consultants
and right consultants.
The right town planner, the right architect. I mean, if you end up having to go to Land Environment Court or whatever, just get the best legal representation and town planning representation you can. Obviously, on a $60 million project, it was worth doing that for me. I mean, you wouldn't
have done that on a duplex, Bob.
You wouldn't spend $1 million to get a duplex approval you're going to make $500,000 on.
No, that wouldn't be worth it.
No.
But any other parting words from your 40 years of experience?
I mean, not all councils are the same.
No.
As we know, there's some fast track methods. Get to know those, and maybe see what you can do in that space, and just use the best consultants you can get all the time. That's what you need to do.
Okay, thanks, Bob. Well, we will catch everyone next week.
Necessary evil.
Yes, the council, the necessary evil. What was it? We love them.
My apologies to all you council workers out there. I'm only really not having a shot at you, just the bureaucracy side of things that happen sometimes.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, Bob. Okay. See ya. See you next week.